Hello, energy enthusiasts. Welcome to Energenomics. I'm your host, Richa Mishra. We were told the battle of our time is green versus fossil. In Indian kitchens, it's actually expensive versus sasta. Coal runs your fan at 2 a.m., solar gives you a TED talk and shuts off at 6 p.m. And yet, green is winning the popularity contest. To decode why, I have with me Harish Bijoor, brand strategist, author, and the man who has spent over 25 years telling companies don't sell the product, sell the reason to buy it. So let's get into it. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Richa. My pleasure being here. Yeah.
So, sir, I mean, it's straight away get to the point, constant debate, and a very interesting incident recently happened with me. Someone walked up to me and said, "You don't support green because you're a reporter who writes on fossil fuel." So I was like, I went on a guilt trip. Like, was I doing something wrong writing on fossil fuel kind? So I come immediately to a point with you, and that's why I reached out to you that you have built brands inside India's biggest conglomerates. So, you've spoken energy plus economics plus branding. So, what I want to understand is how do we make people stop hating their electricity bill?
That's a good question, Richa, and the subject is very good because, I think there's green at one end and there are fossil fuels at the other. What is good and bad is a value judgment one tends to pass, and this value judgment is passed by society. You know, at times, what they think is good is actually bad, and what they think is bad is actually good at a later point of time. One clear example is the fact that India grew up eating frozen desserts. Okay, and frozen desserts were being sold by one of the biggest multinationals in the country. And of course, they couldn't call it ice cream, but it was like ice cream. It tasted like ice cream. It looked like ice cream. Was marketed like ice cream. But if you looked at the fine print, it would say frozen desert. Now, frozen desert was actually made out of palm oil and palm oil and not out of cow butter, ghee, cream, etc., cow milk or buffalo milk, etc. So at that point of time, frozen dessert was a hero, and everybody loved frozen desserts, and these are the biggest brand names. And I don't take brand names typically in my talks, but typically, in comes a new generation now, and the new generation says that ice cream is good, ice cream is the only good thing, and palm oil is a villain. So it is contextual. An entire generation has grown up on palm oil and has moved somewhere. So, fossil fuel versus, green. There's an eminent degree of greenwashing which is going around in the country, across the globe. And sadly, some of us bite into the greenwashing brigade. The fact remains that fossil fuels are the larger of the entities that are out there, and green is a niche. How do you manage both of it? I think it's extremely important for us to give fossil fuels a new identity and be very, very clear all the harm that fossil fuels do to us, and at the same time buy into that harm responsibly. And therefore, responsible consumption is the norm. If you really hate fossil fuels, why are you filling up your tanks all the time and riding all those meaningless distances? Maybe you should walk, maybe you should cycle, maybe do different things.
So, sir, if it is like a new FMCG product, then what will be a pitch?
Well, the pitch is love thy energy. Okay. What does energy do? The important thing is there are many, many dimensions to energy. Okay. The first dimension to energy in my marketing approaches with energy companies, this is what I use, and therefore let me share it with you. There's something called energy origin. That's the first step I take. Where is this energy coming from? Okay. And therein lies a story as to where that energy comes from. Okay. So you can build a story on that. The second point is what is this energy passing through? That is What is the channel this energy is passing through? And how responsibly is that channel being handled? The third is, what is it achieving? What is energy use like? So the third is energy use. And the fourth is, where is it ending up? What is the last point? What is the result of this energy? What does it create? All these four are marketing options for us. I would simply say, I would start with the last point. What does energy do? And energy, what it does is what it gives. And what it gives is the value that a human being actually tries to capitalize upon. So love the energy, leave back good energy, trust good energy, and I think be responsible with energy. Most important.
So that's very well explained. So but there are many, and when I speak to people, the critics normally say that UPI sold money, Geo sold freedom, Ujwala sold dignity, and discoms are selling, and there's kind of a smirk on their face, and they say a PDF with a late fee. So fossil fuels sell power, green cells for a person like me guilt. Which is a better pitch to sell to 1.4 billion people?
Richa, if you have 1.4 billion people in this country, it means to say that all are not alike. All live at different ends of the pyramid. So there's a prosperity pyramid. Some live at the base of the pyramid, some at the middle, some at the top. Those who live at the base are the lower income groups. Then there's a middle income group. There's the upper income group. To each of these, the energy story needs to be different. So the first thing we need to do in energy marketing is segmentation. We need to approach the fact that India is a nation of 1.48 billion people, and that's we're the largest nation in the world in terms of population. We have three kinds of people minimum, and each one of them has got different needs, different wants, and different desires. And I add different aspirations, and I add one more thing, different fantasies. The people who live in the lower income group have a need, and that need is commodity need. So you'll market to them like a commodity. The people in the middle income group have a want and a desire to have better degrees of interaction with the energy, types of energy, what energy does, etc. They're the ones who are going to ask, what does energy do? Where is it coming from? So you give them a different story. And people who literally sit at the top of the pyramid, the upper income group, they are self-actualizing people. You need to tell them that, what's the real energy story for them is that less is more, totally. And therefore, you need to be selling the good for some sections, selling the bad for some sections, and selling the ugly for some sections. I'm being straight here. Because, let's be practical. We live in a real society. I know I love clean energy, but then in a nation of 1.48 billion, you need to be selling the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the ratio between the three will keep changing. Today, possibly the ugly is 99%, and the bad is maybe 1%, and the good just doesn't exist. But then we need to change that ratio. I think India, as it grows, needs to focus on changing this ratio to a point of time when we come to 33.33 recurring, maybe across all three segments. It'll take 100 years. Yeah.
My last question, I want to take you back to from where we started our conversation. And I want to understand from you is, on a little serious note, that what's the biggest mistake in branding a fuel which we do?
Mm,
We did petrol, diesel, then ethanol, we're talking biofuel, we're talking so many
mm.
things. We're talking green hydrogen, we're talking solar generated electricity, we're talking wind, we're talking just too many things. So what is the biggest mistake which is happening in the branding, given we are such a price sensitive market?
Okay. The answer lies in your question itself. You ended the question saying price sensitive market. And that's the biggest mistake that we've made. We put a price to the fuel. All marketing, when it comes to fuel marketing, is related to the price of the fuel. Full stop. It starts there. So we start with price. When you start with price, the conversation closes. People tend to say that, well, it's price and price that keeps going up and down, etc., etc. So we've always focused on money. I think we should forget the money angle in fuel marketing and we should talk the time angle in fuel marketing. What's the meaning of that? I simply mean to say that, we have two currencies in our pocket. One is time, the other is money. Money is what a currency which can be topped up by me the next month by working hard. But time is a currency I can't top up. Time goes. And if you focus on saying that what does energy do to time saving for you as a time saver, I think that's a much better one because we've always said that energy is a transaction. I think it should stop. We need to be marketing energy as a relationship and a pure relationship. Out here, I'd like to say that it's very important for us to market energy, clean energy, market clean energy because electricity itself, the kind of electricity used, sometimes power goes off. We use a DG set, and DG set enemy good air. Out from the DG set comes all kinds of PMs of soot and dust that goes into the air. Other solutions, yeah, there are solutions. There's something called a retrofit emission device that was made by people within this country. There's a company in Pune, Innovations, puts together, but it's an expensive piece of a device and it's a large piece of a device. You need to get responsible. And every DG set must fit an RECD. That's the beginning. That is an adoption that we need to ensure in the B2B category. Responsibility in fuel marketing, responsibility in energy handling must start at the B2B level, business to business level. There are factories in our country which use DG sets without a retrofit emission control device. That means the pollution goes into the air. Get one of these RECD guys, spend money on it, and get moving. And I think that is what we need to back. And that is going to sort out the cleaner future for energy in our country. And energy marketing will fall into place as being a hero task rather than a villain task. We need to stop villainization of energy. We need to start worshipping energy as a rare entity we must take good care of, and we must worship clean energy for sure.
So, to conclude, the energy debate isn't green versus fossil, it's expensive versus affordable, complicated versus simple, guilt versus gain. The one that wins that branding war wins. For those who want to hear my detailed conversation with Harish Bijoor, it is given in the link below. This is all we have in this episode of Energenomics. Till we meet again.